Welcome to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
We are off and running on a Saturday morning. I'm your host, Tim Murray. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. The next 3 hours getting you ready for a busy, busy day all across the sports landscape as we've got 2 more games in the NBA playoffs, 2 more games in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and, there's a whole lot of other things going on as we get closer and closer to the start of the college baseball World Series. We'll do a little bit of that. Major League Baseball, of course, continues to roll along. That guy Shohei Ohtani, by the way, not too shabby at what he does for a living as a 3-run homer last night in Arizona to get the Dodgers a 14-11 victory. What a night it was last night as the Cavaliers get a little bit healthier, get on the board with a win on the road against the Indiana Pacers. The Denver Nuggets, despite a poor performance from the best player on planet Earth, Nikola Jokic, they get it done in overtime, and now the Denver Nuggets find themselves up 2-1 with a Game 4 in Denver on Sunday afternoon. We'll get into what happened in depth last night a little bit later on in the show. Busy day ahead for you here from a guest standpoint as we'll prepare you for Caps and Hurricanes, which will be the first game on the ice tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern down in Raleigh, North Carolina. We'll talk to my good friend, the voice of the Washington Capitals, John Walton, coming up here in just a little bit. But what we like to do to get you ready for every single Saturday here on the VSiN Weekend Morning Line, let's set the scene.
Let's dive into the biggest games of the day.
And it does not get much bigger than what we will see this afternoon, 3:30 Eastern, Madison Square Garden. Maybe the biggest game at Madison Square Garden, at least from a basketball standpoint involving the New York Knicks. There's a lot that goes on at Madison Square Garden. But when you look at the history of the New York Knicks, the games that have been played in that arena in recent memory, I think you have to go back to 1999, the NBA Finals, to have a game with this much buzz, this much anticipation. Hell, look at the ticket prices out there. You're going to have to sell a fortune in order to get into Madison Square Garden later on this afternoon as the New York Knicks went up to Boston, trailed by 20 in Game 1. You know what they did. Came back and won in overtime. Game 2, trailed by 20 again late in the third quarter. You know what they did. Won in regulation, and a lot of that has to do with the shooting woes of the Boston Celtics. 25 of 100. Yes, 25 of 100 from long range. Jason Tatum, very well aware of the shooting woes of his Boston Celtics so far.
It just hasn't happened the last 2 games, but you can't lose your confidence. You gotta, we just talked about it. When you're open, you gotta shoot the ball. Don't worry about the last shot. Don't worry about the next shot. Shoot it with confidence, and I'm sure that they'll start falling soon.
There he is, Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, one of the best players on planet Earth, but he knows that he needs to step up here in this afternoon's game against the New York Knicks. Right now, the New York Knicks find themselves as a home underdog, number sitting around 6 at most shops. Here at Circa, it is at 5.5. Worth noting, and a lot of it has to do with the New York Knicks. How about underdogs so far in this second round? They are 9-3. Straight up, forget the spread, straight up, as we saw another underdog win outright yesterday in the Denver Nuggets. But for the New York Knicks, they're trying to erase their memory of what happened in Boston, where they were able to snag not 1 but 2 games from the Boston Celtics and Jalen Brunson and company back home. And they know Game 3 is vital.
The mentality is 0-0. Don't even focus on that. Just focus on the next play, next quarter. Don't look ahead. Don't look into anything. You just got to be focused on the task at hand and be present.
Jalen Brunson, how about this? His dad, Rick Brunson, was on the New York Knicks in that game back in 1999 when the Knicks hosted an NBA Finals game against the San Antonio Spurs. So an early afternoon tip. Right now, spread sitting at 6 at most shops, 5.5 here at Circa. Total has bumped up just a little bit to 207. Celtics and Knicks 3:30 Eastern today, with the Knicks trailing or up 2-0. And in the series price, this has been interesting. After game 2 wrapped up, the Knicks were a series favorite. Well, guess what has happened over the past couple of days? The Celtics have returned as a series favorite. Right now, at DraftKings, the Celtics -125, the Knicks +105 there for that series price. On to tonight, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors. Game number 1, we saw Steph Curry go out with the hamstring injury, but that did not affect the final result for the Golden State Warriors. They were up double digits at halftime on the road in the Twin Cities. They were able to hold on for that Game 1 victory. Game 2, a little bit of a different story, as the Golden State Warriors were, let's just say, not as competitive as they were in game number 1. So they head back to the Chase Center, but unfortunately, Steph Curry will be sidelined, as he, of course, is dealing with that hamstring injury.
I'm not rushing it. Like I said, there has to be a natural healing process that happens, and the body will tell you, even if you're able to do like normal basketball movements, staying free and all that stuff. And I know how tricky hamstrings can be, where they can fool you and think that it's healed even if you don't feel anything. And so that gray area is a little confusing. Will be confusing, I'm sure, but I'll do everything in my power to get back as soon as possible.
So no Steph Curry tonight, of course, for the Golden State Warriors. So who will step up in his absence? We've seen them try to piece things together, try to figure it out. Steve Kerr went to, 14 players in the first half to try to figure out a lineup that would be effective. We'll see. Jonathan Kuminga stepped up in game 2, but not nearly enough against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Heading into tonight's game, the number sitting at 5.5, depending on where you look. So once again, we have a pair of home dogs. We've got the New York Knicks. They're the home dog today against the Boston Celtics. The Golden State Warriors, without Steph Curry, they are the home dogs. Low total sitting at 200.5 between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors. Series price in this one at 1-1. This is the most spread out series price, as the Minnesota Timberwolves sit as a -320 favorite. Golden State +260 if you think they can come back. And the thought process I think many of us are thinking about is, all right, how can Golden State ultimately get back in this series? When will we see Steph Curry again? I would imagine they're going to have to figure out a way to win one of these 2 games at home, and maybe we see Steph for a Game 6 back at the Chase Center. So we'll see if we get a desperate effort from the Golden State Warriors. We'll talk more about this. Jonathan Von Tobel will join us later on in this hour. On to the ice, where the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes will play Game 3 of their series down in Raleigh, North Carolina. The Carolina Hurricanes came back, won Game 1 in overtime. The Caps responded with a 3-1 win back on Thursday night there in the nation's capital to even up this series at 1 game apiece. They're down in Raleigh today, and the head coach of Washington is Spencer Carberry.
We got this series back to square one. We evened it up. We did what we had to do in game 2 to get back into the fight. And now going on the road for 2 and them having home ice advantage through the challenge increases a little bit, and that means that we're going to have to meet that challenge with our game, and the things that we're doing on the ice for 60 minutes is going to have to get better. And I think they know that and embrace that. I genuinely believe we can play better, and so hopefully that comes to fruition in Game 3.
Tom Wilson was the difference maker in game number 2 for the Washington Capitals. Alex Ovechkin alluded to him being their leader, the guy who sets the tone there. He was phenomenal. Logan Thompson was great in net, but different ball game going down to a different barn. The Carolina Hurricanes, the series favorite here at -230, able to take one of those 2 games. So they have swiped home ice away from the Washington Capitals. We'll get much more on Caps and Canes coming up in 5 minutes as we check in with my good buddy, the voice of the Washington Capitals, John Walton, live from Raleigh, North Carolina, to give us the latest on that series. 1-1 around a 6 o'clock Eastern puck drop down there in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then late night tonight, the Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Edmonton Oilers, taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. I apologize. Taking on The Edmonton Oilers, yes, they are taking on the Edmonton Oilers. Apologies. Had a little bit of a brain cramp there because the Oilers are such a massive favorite in this series. So this series shifts north of the border here tonight. Vegas dropping both games on home ice, and the Oilers a slight favorite at home tonight. How about the Edmonton Oilers dropping games 1 and 2 against the Los Angeles Kings, winning the Final Four, and now have taken games 1 and 2 of this series, winning Game 2 in overtime against the Vegas Golden Knights, 5-4 the final score. I know Vegas wasn't thrilled about a penalty that was not called early on in overtime, so we will see if Vegas can go up and get the first win of their series for them, but they are going to have their hands full north of the border up there against Edmonton. Edmonton, by the way, on the series price, now out to minus 550. If you think the Golden Knights can come back, 4-1 is where the Golden Knights are. So there you go. Busy day ahead. Let's set you up for what we've got in store from a guest standpoint today here on the program. As mentioned, coming up on the other side of our first break, we'll head down to Raleigh, North Carolina, check in with the voice of the Washington Capitals, John Walton. JVT, Jonathan Von Tobel, he will jump on the program later on this hour. We'll talk about the 2 games today on the hardwood. We'll get an in-depth breakdown of Celtics-Knicks with Brian Barrett. Cody Decker, my good buddy, in hour number 2. And how about a little college baseball chatter? You know, we're going to get that bracket soon enough. In about a month, we're going to be in Omaha. Matt Grissom will give us the latest on college baseball, but a huge one today, just a little after 6 o'clock in the East, down in Raleigh, North Carolina. Caps and Canes. Can the Washington Capitals take a 2-1 series lead? We'll check in with John Walton next.
VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning, live from the Circus Sportsbook in downtown Las Vegas. I'm your host, Tim Murray. About last night, we'll have to wait just a little bit. We'll tell you what happened last night coming up in 15 minutes. But right now, let's head to our progressive guest line. And anytime I have the opportunity to catch up with an old friend, I will do so. John Walton, the radio voice of the Washington Capitals. I was his producer. What was that, 13 years ago? Wow. Man, time flies, John.
Yeah, that was a lot. We were much younger people the last time that happened, Tim.
No kids for me, no gray in the beard, but I am so excited that, once again, we try to be partial. We're a betting network. We want to focus on that. But look, I'm from DC. I'm a Caps fan, and I'm fired up for this franchise and for you as well. But I want to get to this because I think the casual fan, as we came into the second round, said, all right, the Caps are the team with the better record. And then when you glance at the betting odds, you say, wow, they're the underdog against the Carolina Hurricanes. They split the 2 games in D.C. And I know you just chatted with Spencer Carberry, the head coach of Washington, not too long ago. Despite them being in first place all year long, do they have that proverbial chip on their shoulder heading into these 2 games down in Carolina?
It's funny, Tim, at the beginning of this season, I remember looking on opening night and, the numbers aren't what they are, but, the Caps, we felt like this was going to be a team that would make the playoffs. I would be lying if I said I thought they were going to be first place and first overall in the Eastern Conference, but I thought this was a playoff team. And a lot of places you'd see made a 22% chance of even making the playoffs. And I remember back in October and November, a lot of the players were saying, yeah, we're going to show them that we're better than that. And they kind of played with that chip on their shoulder. So yesterday, I asked Spencer Carberry about that. I said, this has kind of been a mentality all season long that, even though, the odds are going to say, oh, Carolina is going to win the series, how much of that is fuel? And he said, we really appreciated the question. And then he gave a very long and very detailed answer on, it's not the biggest thing in the room, but it is something that the guys think about. And the guys, they're human and they look at, what's being said. And, Carolina's a good hockey team. It's not about Carolina. I think it's just about some of the analytics that people look at. The Capitals 1 through 12 in terms of forward, 1 through 6 on defense. And the guys they have in goal, not just Logan Thompson, who's been terrific, but Charlie Lindgren too. They're as deep a team, I think. They don't have that superstar cachet like in Edmonton or even like a Vegas, but they're just a good team, and they always find a way to win. And when they lost in Game 3 in the first round against Montreal, they bounced back and they won the series in 5 games, very businesslike. They lost Game 1 at home. Oh, no, they lost home ice. They turn around and get Game 2, and now here they are tonight in Game 3. So This series to me is going long. I don't know if Carolina's going to win or Washington's going to win because both these teams are excellent. But I don't know that the Caps get quite the justice that they maybe should be given otherwise, and maybe they'll show that here tonight in Game 3.
John Walton, the radio voice of the Washington Capitals, joining us here courtesy of our Progressive Guest Line. You can follow him on social media at John Walton, PXP. He and Tarek El-Bashir will be doing some live coverage down there just a little bit there, so check that out on social media. You know, I heard Alex Ovechkin post-game after the Game 2 win talk about Tom Wilson. And everywhere you look, if you're looking for some pre-game coverage, post-game coverage, you know, unfortunately, I'll say this, John, when you think about Tom Wilson, the discussion more often than not is the big hits and is he a dirty player? Is he that? He was just phenomenal in Game 2. So Ovi said, and I think I'm paraphrasing, he's our best player. How important is Tom Wilson for this Washington Capitals team moving forward here in this series and then maybe even beyond?
I think he is tremendously important because of what he brings to the table. And this was his best year he's ever had. First time to 30 goals. And I thought, and I still think this a couple of days later, that might have been the best game I've ever seen Tom Wilson play. I have been here since day one of his career, and I can't think of a game where he laid it all on the line, led by example physically. And when you think physical, it's like, oh, hitting and intimidating. And yeah, he does that. But it was the blocked shots. It was laying his body on the line to keep pucks away from a Carolina team that does nothing but throw pucks at the net. There is no shot discrimination in Carolina's game. They're going to get 80, 90 attempts a game. They have in this series. And not all of them are great quality. And that's just been the hallmark of a Rod Brind'Amour team. That's their philosophy. And it works for them. They made the playoffs and gotten out of the first round 7 straight years. But they haven't been able to really advance past that. Because in large part, you know what's coming, and the Caps do, but you've got to be able to sacrifice your body and sacrifice, especially in the shot block category. Capitals have 70 blocked shots in this series already, and Tom Wilson led by example. He was phenomenal, and I think you're going to see more of that here tonight in Game 3.
So you look at the 2 games that we've seen so far. Game 1 goes to Carolina, goes to overtime, 2-1 final, and then we see the 3-1 comeback victory for Washington. So I bring that I say those scores, John, to bring it to this, which is in order for Washington to be successful in this series, does it have to be low scoring? How do you see, what is the blueprint for Washington to go down to Carolina and either win tonight or win on Monday to even keep this series even to go back to Washington?
I would say this. I don't think it has to be the recipe for success that it's low scoring, but I'm going to tell you in the series, it's going to be low scoring because you've got the 2 best goalies in the tournament that are going head to head here. Freddie Anderson's got a 1.55 goals against average. Logan Thompson's just over 2. Both have been terrific. I feel like the Caps, how they win this series and what they'll need to do, and they were better from Game 1 to Game 2, where they generated more. They were able to establish a little bit more of a forecheck and be able to get better offensive chances. It's a little bit harder when you don't have last change, but we saw in the last series that Spencer Carberry, I thought, was terrific in being able to, even not having last change, to be able to get the guys out he wanted against Montreal. I think you're going to see more of that here tonight. I do not expect a lot of goals in this series, but I do expect the Caps can come out on the winning side of it if they can generate just a little bit more offensive punch, be able to get some second chances. They really haven't had a lot of those in this series so far, but if they can do that, just be able to forecheck and pressure the Carolina D just a little bit more, just 10% more to be able to get some pucks in on net. So when you look at the end of the first period tonight and you see the shots pretty even, maybe it's 9-7, 10-7 Carolina, I call that a win, even if the game's scoreless, because I think that would mean you're starting to get more chances and you're starting to get a few more pucks.
John Walton hanging with us here. He's down there in Raleigh. He's outside the practice rink as things are about to get going for the Capitals. There'll be a morning skate coming up here in just a moment. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about Alex Ovechkin right out of the gates in the postseason. He gets a game winner, the first of his career. People were stunned to hear that stat after, the run up to the record. And then, oh my God, he's never won a game in overtime in the playoffs. Well, he's done that now. So look, when you look at the betting odds and all of that, John, of course, Alex Ovechkin's odds are going to be way, way juiced because of who he is. But what have you seen through the first 2 games of this series, and what do you expect from the Grade 8 moving forward here against Carolina?
Well, he's been quiet. He has had trouble generating shots to this point, but I think we can point to a couple of things that maybe we'll turn that around for game 3. Alexei Protas was out for the better part of 4 weeks and only got back at the end of the Montreal series. Most of the time this season, and Alexei, a 30-goal scorer himself this season, playing with Dylan Strome, playing with Alex Ovechkin, huge guy, 6'6", strong on the wall, can open up some more time and space for Alex to be able to generate some of those chances. Alex had 4 goals in the Montreal series, and I think the matchups were very favorable for that. I think against Carolina, it's less so just because they are relentless as a 5-man unit. They're in your face all the time. And I think Alex has struggled to be able to find a little bit of time and space. But I think getting Alexei Protas back on that line, and I know you're going to see that here tonight in game 3, I think that opens up some more opportunity for him. You get just a couple of shooting lanes. He's not just a power play guy. Power play's been great, I think, or at least better in this series than opposed to where it was in the last. But I think getting a few more chances there, a little bit more at 5-on-5 with some time and space, I think you're going to be able to see him break through in this series yet.
How's the atmosphere going to be tonight?
Insane. This place, they start tailgating in the parking lot here about 2 o'clock. They're going to be rather lubricated here. And this building truly one of the loudest in the league. And the job that the Canes have done, Rod Brindamore in the last 7 years has really revitalized things. It kind of was in the wilderness there after their Stanley Cup. It's on fire. They're going to be fired up. It's like a football tailgate atmosphere here. They're going to bring that indoors. And the Caps got to withstand that in the first 10 minutes. But do that, calm the building. If the Caps can get the first goal, taking them out of it's certainly going to be a big part of this series.
It's going to be a fun day of sports, and that includes, of course, Washington at Carolina. John, always appreciate it, my friend. Have a great call on the radio side tonight.
Always love watching you, Tim. Always proud of you, man. And we'll talk to you, I'm sure, before too long. But thanks for this.
There he is, my guy, John Walton, the radio voice of the Washington Capitals. I was, his producer way back when, his first year as the voice of the Washington Capitals. And since then, he's gone on to call a Stanley Cup and Alex Ovechkin's record-setting goal. He just needed to get rid of me, get a new producer in there, and he would flourish. But no, always appreciate his insight there. We'll circle back to what he said coming up a little bit later on. But just a reminder, folks, you can bet the Preakness Stakes with First Bet and get rewarded. New customers can use promo code VSiN200 to score a 20% rebate on all wagers for the first 60 days up to $200. That's win or lose, you get paid. Download the First Bet app or visit firstbet.com/bet. Use the promo code VSiN200 to get started today. Firstbet.com/bet, promo code VSiN200.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning, getting you ready for a busy day ahead here on this middle of May weekend, Mother's Day weekend. Just a reminder, tomorrow, Mother's Day, just a reminder, all of you. And, I think the most important thing you should do for anyone in your life that you look to be celebrating Mother's Day, just a reminder that the VSiN Weekend Morning Line is on from 10 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So start your day, make some brunch and say, hey, Mom, look what's on. Tim Murray, the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. That's what I think all mothers probably would like. Jonathan Von Tobel going to join us in 15 minutes. We'll get his thoughts on what we saw last night, looking ahead to the 2 games today. Thanks again to John Walton. I want to circle back to, we'll play it a little bit later on in the show, what John had to say regarding this series and how it could ultimately be played out. So far, Caps and Canes, 2 games, small sample size, of course, 2-1. Game 1, Carolina wins under the total. Game 2, 3-1. Washington wins under the total. A total of 0 goals so far in the first period. So will that continue here this evening? That will remain to be seen. But right now, if you're looking at Washington and Carolina and what that first period number sits at, it is juiced actually to the over ever so slightly. So there is some expectation that maybe we're going to see some goals here in the first period. But right now, if you look at first period, -15 to the over at most shops. Here at Circa, -110 both ways. And Carolina is a pretty significant favorite here. We'll talk about what we saw last night in 2 desperate spots on the ice, both from the standpoint of Dallas and Winnipeg, and the Jets ultimately getting that, and Florida getting the win in overtime. But pretty juiced up prices there, and you're getting that a little bit here, especially with Washington and Carolina money yet again coming in on the Carolina Hurricanes. It came in on Carolina in game 1. That proved to be accurate. Needed overtime, but it got there. It came in on Carolina for game 2. That did not come home as Washington won the game 3-1. But we'll get to a little bit of hockey here in just a moment. But let's circle back to what we saw last night. You might be just getting up. Maybe you didn't see the ending of what unfolded last night in Denver. But that was, you could look at that multiple ways, I think. You could look at Denver getting the win and Nikola Jokic not playing nearly up to the standards of what we expect from Nikola Jokic. Still went for 20 and 16, had 4 important points in overtime. But in the 113-104 win for the Denver Nuggets, total, by the way, still goes under despite going to overtime. It was impressive to look at the way Aaron Gordon stepped up, hitting that big corner 3 to tie the game at 102 apiece. Michael Porter Jr. with the shoulder injury and still having by far his best game of this postseason, hitting 5 of 6 from long range, and Jamal Murray making some big-time plays. So if you're looking at it from a Denver standpoint, I think you have to be insanely encouraged to see Denver come out with this 113-104 win. As mentioned, Nikola Jokic, 8 of 25 from the field in regulation, 6 of 22. Missed all of his three-point attempts, and yet the Denver Nuggets still got the victory. And the Joker, who, by the way, was dressed up as the Joker going into the arena last night, was, let's just say, happy to see his teammates step up when he was not at his best.
They're aggressive, they're physical, they're handsy, they're in the street, they're playing passing lanes, I mean, I don't know what they're doing because if I know probably I'm not going to do those kind of mistakes, so I need to figure out what they're doing. So, basically I was the worst player on the court today, but we won the game, and that's the most important.
By the way, Twitter was, like it always is, on fire last night. And Paulie Howard, of course, our Follow the Money co-host here, weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m. Eastern time, said this: OKC in deep bleep. 104 points in overtime versus 21st ranked defense, and Joker was awful. You could certainly look at it that way. I'm curious to get the perspective of JVT when he jumps on the program here, because I would say you look at what we saw last night and you are not feeling great if you have an Oklahoma City Thunder in your back pocket. But one thing that was notable, and I don't know, maybe I'm crazy and probably am. Did you see SGA walking off the court last night? He had this big old grin on his face like, yeah, we'll be all right. And all Oklahoma City has to do, easier said than done because of what we saw last night. I'm always a big proponent of let's not overreact. It was a loss on the road in overtime in a game that, yeah, they probably should have won based off of the performance you got from Nikola Jokic. Game 1, the one they lost at home, OKC, you had 44, 22, and 6 from Nikola Jokic. Last night it was 20, 16, and 6, and he had a boatload of turnovers, 8 turnovers in all. SGA seemed off, and I think a lot of questions can be asked whether or not the Oklahoma City Thunder maybe offensively should have gone to Jalen Williams more as that game went on, as opposed to going to SGA. But easier said than done when you've got the MVP of the league. And even look at Denver last night. Who did they go to on the last shot of regulation, despite the fact that he had not made one three-pointer? Nikola Jokic. Why? He's their best player. So I think SGA has a bounce back. I imagine Jokic is going to have a bounce back. Game 4 in Denver, 2-1. Oklahoma City, though, still the series favorite at minus 210, and right now a 6-point favorite for Sunday. Well, the series we were very curious about after games 1 and 2 went the way that they did, the Indiana Pacers winning both games 1 and 2 in Cleveland. We see the injuries unfold in game number 1. We have no Mobley in game 2. We have no DeAndre Hunter in game 2. Darius Garland didn't play in games 1 and 2. Well, they all played yesterday. And on the road, the Cleveland Cavaliers thumped the Indiana Pacers and got a much-needed win, covering the 5.5, 126-104. Never really in doubt. Donovan Mitchell has been spectacular in this series for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but he is not counting his chickens just yet, even though Cleveland now is the betting favorite at minus 150 to win this series. Here's Donovan Mitchell following last night's 22-point victory.
We won one game. We got to do it again. It's been my message. I told them we're not celebrating, we're not smiling. We came here to take 2 games, and we did one. You know what I mean? Understanding that the next one's going to be the hardest game of the series. You know what I mean? And the next one after that's going to be the hardest game. So take that for what it is, and understand that, hey, we did a job, and we got to keep going.
Got a list for you. It includes Michael Jordan and LeBron James. NBA players to average 40-plus points per game over the first 3 games of a playoff series in the last 40 years. Jordan did it 5 times. LeBron did it twice. Donovan Mitchell. That's your list. 40 points per game over the first 3 games of a playoff series in the last 40 years. Jordan, LeBron, Donovan Mitchell. And Donovan Mitchell, he was sensational in Game 2. I was curious, how would this team respond after having their hearts ripped out from their chest in Game 2, blowing a 7-point lead in the final 40 seconds at home in Game 2? Well, they responded quite well. Evan Mobley solid in his return. He played 35 minutes yesterday. Darius Garland with that turf toe played 25 minutes yesterday. Solid performance there, plus 10. And Donovan Mitchell, man, 43 for him. Spider Mitchell in this series. Game 1, 33. Game 2, 48. And last night, 43. And game number 4 will be in Indiana. And as mentioned, Cleveland had down 2-1 is back to the series favorite here against the Indiana Pacers. On the ice last night, the Florida Panthers taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Maple Leaf fans were thinking, is this really going to happen? Are we going to go up 3-0 on the Florida Panthers? Led 2-0. Led 3-1. Had to go to overtime. Now, the Maple Leafs forced overtime, right? Down 4-3. Got that goal to force overtime. But Brad Marchand, the man they traded for this year, nets the game winner. His thoughts following the Panthers' 5-4 triumph in overtime.
I love their resiliency. We battled back from a couple 2-goal deficits, and we just competed the way that we know that we can, and yeah, it feels good, but it's all about doing it again the next game. They're going to come out hard. You saw the way that they prepared for the game tonight. They have that killer instinct right now, so we have to do a better job preparing to start the game and then carry it through.
Maple Leaf fans, man, they want so bad to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Haven't been there in over 20 years. Now it's 2-1. Now it's a series. Real quickly, in Winnipeg last night, how about the performance from Connor Hellebuck? Clean sheet for him, 21 saves, some spectacular saves as well. Jets even up the series at 1 game apiece. Hey, folks, just a reminder, we've got a great deal going for you over at VSiN.com. You can get 14 months for just $199. VSiN.com/subscribe. Use the promo code PRO. Jonathan Von Tobel talking hoops with us next.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
We keep it rolling here on a Saturday morning. How about a little breaking news on a Saturday morning as we welcome in our good friend from Money Moves here, weekdays on the network, noon to 2 p.m. Eastern. He and Stormy Bonatoni. Jonathan Von Tobel joins us right now, and the breaking news is that Derek Carr is retiring. Tom Pelissero has just put this out. 4-time Pro Bowl quarterback Derek Carr retiring. Sources tell the insiders, dealing with that shoulder injury and threatened this season. So Derek Carr, at the age of 34, JVT, walking away. Of course, spent the majority of his career with the Raiders, some of that time here in Las Vegas. And, it was kind of a weird couple of weeks where he was frustrated, I guess, at the reporting that came out about this shoulder injury. And now, lo and behold, here on May 10th, he's going to retire. So it seemed likely that Tyler Shuck would be the day one starter there. And now it seems like it's his squad moving forward. So, what do you make of this news? And is this something you look at Tyler Shuck at 22-1 right now at DraftKings as a little flyer at Offensive Rookie of the Year?
I mean, I feel like if you were looking at Tyler Shuck, you were already looking at him, right?
Sure.
Derek Carr was not going to begin the year healthy. He wasn't going to play. Tyler Shuck was the assumed starter heading into the offseason, rookie OTAs, all that kind of thing. So I don't think that this would really change much for you in terms of your thought process. Like if you were on the fence about whether or not to add him, I don't think this would do anything for you. I think you just add him just because he's probably going to be the guy to start the regular season. They spent a relatively high draft pick on the guy. They want to give him a shot to actually get in there and take the job. And I don't think that they were going to take the job away from him should Derek Carr have been healthy, because the theory would be that if they were good enough by the time Derek Carr came back, then Shuck was going to be fine as your starter. So I think that this doesn't really change anything for if you're talking about actually betting into that market.
Yeah, so right now, DraftKings 22-1, FanDuel 20-1, Circa 15-1, Westgate here in town 16-1. So once again, the breaking news, Derek Carr retiring, according to Tom Pelissero. Jonathan Von Tobel joining us here on the Weekend Morning Line. JVT, I know you hear it a lot. This is the biggest game in New York since ... whether it be 1999 or 2013, whatever. We care about what we're going to bet on here. Look, I'm stubborn. I've already lost one series bet on the Celtics, -2.5 games. Prior to game 2, I went in at -1.5 games. And then I went in again on the series price at -105. Didn't get the best of the number here. But curious your thought process on Boston, New York today, both from today's game and also big picture for this series with the Celtics down 0-2.
Yeah, I made the declaration on Money Moves that we're going, when we play again in Boston, which we will, this will be a 2-2 series. I think that we're freaking out a lot about the two blown 20-point leads, and rightfully so. You should not blow 20-point leads. Like that is it. That is end statement. Having said that, through 2 games, Tim, the Celtics have generated 48 uncontested 3-point attempts. They've hit 25% of those. Like the process is fine. The result just hasn't been where they need it to be. Like this is going to be one where if there is a course correction, which there should be, nothing is guaranteed, but one would assume. And if that course correction happens, this is going to look closer to the series that took place in the regular season, in which the Boston Celtics ran through the New York Knicks in 4 games that they played against one another, covering 3 of them. I think that the conversations we're having around this Celtics team are extremely lazy. I think that there's a lot of people who are doing stuff like firing Joe Mazzulla, despite the fact that he has won a championship. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. This team is very good. This team is actually very good in clutch time. A lot of people keep pointing to the fact they're like, well, this team was never tested last year in clutch time. This is the best clutch team that we have seen in the last few regular seasons and in the postseason. They've been fine when the game was within 5 feet, or within 5 points and 5 or fewer minutes left to go. I think that we as a sports society need to chill out a little bit and at least look at what has been happening. So I'm with you. I think they can come back and win this series. Even if you wanted, here's the other thing, Tim. Instead of betting them to win the series, you bet them win the NBA Finals, right? Because this is a team that you're not going to get those prices on again should they come storming back and be able to take this series from the New York Knicks. Also, do not forget that this is one of the best road playoff teams that we have seen in a very long time. The last few years, they have been a dominant road postseason team. They've just been a dominant road team in general, and they, for some reason, thrive whenever they play away from home. This is going to be a team that I think is going to be very formidable over the next couple of games when we play them out in New York.
Jonathan Von Tobel joining us here, courtesy of our progressive guest line. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion when we look at these futures because of Oklahoma City down 2-1 now, Boston down 0-2, Cleveland down 2-1, and those are all your betting favorites, 1, 2, 3 to win the NBA Finals. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this market shifts if the teams that were expected to win do come back to win. As for tonight, it's such a tricky spot here with the Golden State Warriors. No Steph Curry. Who steps up in his absence? We've seen Buddy Hield play exceptionally well in Game 7 against Houston. Game 1, he thrived there against this Minnesota squad. Steve Kerr, I'm curious your thought process because he was trying to figure it out on the fly. It almost felt like he kind of punted in game 2, be like, all right, can this piece work? Can this piece work? All right, Kuminga, you get extended time here. So right now, Golden State catching 5.5 at home, total 200.5 JVT. How are you looking at tonight at the Chase Center?
I mean, I think it's Minnesota or nothing here for me when you're looking at this. If you look at the numbers for for Golden State, when you're talking about the non-Curry minutes in this postseason, it has been a nightmare for them. Their offense is under a point per possession. They are outscored by nearly 7 points every 100 possessions. It's been a very poor and ugly slog on the offensive end. And when you put Jimmy Butler on the floor without Steph Curry, it has still been the exact same thing. And that was heading into Game 2 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. If the Timberwolves are a serious basketball team, which I deem them to be, this should be a game where, again, you control from tip to tail and you're able to win and potentially cover. Yes, you're on the road. Yes, role players theoretically play a little bit better, but you have a massive edge here against a team that cannot generate offense without their best player. The spacing for Golden State is atrocious, Tim. There's nobody else out there to stretch the floor outside of the pieces that we know. Buddy Hield, Brandon Podziemski, like if those are the guys that are the top of your list in terms of floor spacers and dangerous threats from deep, you're in a really tough spot. We can include Moses Moody, but Moses Moody went 0 from beyond the arc in game 2. So this is a team that is really going to be up against it from an offensive creation standpoint. And if Minnesota is a legitimate contender, who I think they can be, especially defensively, this should be one again where they control with relative ease throughout the entirety of the game. But even then, look, Tim, I don't know if you trust Minnesota. Look at this last game that they played. The final score is not really indicative. At one point in the third or fourth quarter, you look up, it's a 7-point game. I'm watching at home. I'm like, dude, are we doing this? Like, do I have to watch this game now? Because you cannot take a team seriously. And they ultimately, of course, extend that out and win. But Minnesota, while they should be, they haven't really shown the capability of. So maybe you wait for a slow start and get a cheap in-game price. But to me, it would be -5 for Minnesota here.
All right, looking ahead to tomorrow and a little bit of a recap of last night, because I'm curious your thoughts. You know, I haven't fully dove into it. I talked about it a bit. You know, I saw Paulie Howard put out the tweet that OKC's in a lot of trouble because of you lose this game and Jokic plays poorly. I'll leave it to you. I don't want to lead the witness here. OKC, still the series favorite, 6-point favorite tomorrow night in Denver. They lose in overtime last night. Jokic goes 0 of 10 from 3. Level of worry for OKC, or do you believe they win tomorrow and even this thing going back to OKC?
I mean, I believe they win tomorrow. I think the level of worry is that you as a team put up 99 points per 100 possessions in non-garbage time against this defense. Like it's not a defense that should be holding you down. And yet in 2 of the 3 games we've seen some disjointed effort. I'd also point out that I don't know about you, but I don't think a skilled shooting team like the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to go 9 of 34 from beyond the arc again. But it is somewhat worrisome that, again, Tim, if you go back to the series they lost to Dallas last year, they couldn't hit water falling out of a boat. PJ Washington turned into Ray Allen, and they got bounced in the second round. That, I think, is the worrisome part, is that, again, this team is showing, for whatever reason, the shooting is starting to dissipate at the most important time. So we'll see if that ends up happening. I agree with the general premise. Look, if Jokic is going to have a shooting night like that, if I were to come from the future before the game and tell you, hey, this is what Jokic's stat line is going to be from a shooting perspective, you'd think this Thunder team was going to walk away with the victory. That is not the case, but some better shooting variance, and I would expect that this is a 2-2 series by the time we go back to Oklahoma City.
He's Jonathan Von Tobel. Money Moves. Catch it noon to 2 p.m. Eastern time. He and Stormy Bonatoni. JVT, always appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man.
There he is, JVT, joining us courtesy of our progressive guest line. Once again, the breaking news coming out this morning, and it is now official. It has been released by the New Orleans Saints. They have put out a statement. Derek Carr has retired. Saints quarterback, 4-time Pro Bowl QB, former Raiders QB. He has now decided to hang it up. He is done for his career. What does that do to the futures market from Offensive Rookie of the Year? Or did we already anticipate this move to be coming down the pipeline? We'll discuss that a little bit more. It is the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
According to Saltus Wealth, 41% of high net worth individuals report having been victims of financial crime. Are you next? High-profile individuals like you need more than off-the-shelf solutions. You need concierge digital security from Reputation Defender. It's not just another app, it's a team of experts using best-in-class tools to protect you and your family, covering virtually every aspect of your digital life. Visit reputationdefender.com/success to learn more. That's reputationdefender.com/success.